I lost my VA. He decided to close his virtual assistance business for busy podcasters.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I had to take on all the back end work that I've never had to do before. I've already found one new engineer to outsource to, so I'm okay with that. But so he's at least the audio. I'm not dealing with that. But it was just like, okay, great. I just have more stuff to do. So let me move this one.
That's rough.
Actually, it's funny because I listen to the podcasts anyway, usually in my car after I've already aired them. So now I'm just listening to them again before I air them. So either way, I'm listening to them. So it's just now it happens sooner because I got to do the show notes for the website. I just been too busy to find somebody to eventually outsource that to because I just don't want to pay a lot of money for that stuff right now. So because the podcast is not monetized.
Yeah. I wonder if you could get like a college intern.
Yeah. Interns would be great. I probably would have to track down somebody through like NACAC or something.
Or even like, I feel like they're going away for summer soon, but like the marketing department or, or like English for like, even at like Muhlenberg or Lafayette, like there's so many in the area. If you just like I bet you would get an intern like that.
I agree. It's something I thought about a year ago, and then I found that VA, and I thought about it. I'm like, podcasting has been exploding. So if they're not studying it yet, because eventually I wouldn't mind going in and like doing some teaching classes on what it's like to get into podcasting, or at least come in as a guest speaker and give back to those marketing departments or even the audio. What do you call those guys? They have like the AV departments that go over, I don't know, music. Right. All these guys deal with stuff like that. So anyway, so well, and we played email tag, so you're good for chatting up on stuff, right? You got your game plan?
Yeah, just figured hobbies. So
which is perfect because a podcast right now is a hobby. Everything's a hobby until you make money doing it. So then once you make money doing it, then it's like, oh, there's another.
But then the question becomes, does it become less fun then? You know what I mean? Once it's
true. That's why this has to remain fun, because I really like this. So I mean, if it eventually gets monetized, cool, but I'm not going to stop having fun. So anyway, all right. Well, let's go ahead and fire this off. I don't want to waste any good content. So since you are usually full of lots of it. So all right, stand by. All right, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Little Fuel Show. So today we're bringing back on one of our regular co-hosts. You've listened to her many times before. She's a sports psychologist. She travels around the country. She's been on episode 21, 42, and 53. I'm just going to go ahead and bring her right back on because she's always full of lots of nuggets of knowledge. We're going to be discussing things around hobbies today and our healthy lifestyle. So welcome back, Dr. Megan Cannon, to the show.
Hi, Scott. It is
Hello.
wonderful to be back.
And we're obviously using our fun new Zoom system now. So for our listeners, you now have content coming to you through your earballs, as somebody calls it, earballs. I heard that on another podcast. But then we'll also end up having video content for YouTube as well. So what have you been up to, Megan?
It is busy season over here.
I think it's busy season for like every industry when the spring shift happens. I don't know.
I don't know. And so right now it has just been kind of a wave of things. So we have some, the winter athletes, their postseason and then ending that season, but then also spring that kind of started to flare up. Now club seasons for some of those sports, like volleyball and soccer, those have picked up. And so there is just a tidal wave of things. And
real quick for our listeners, what do you mean by club season? Is that like when like universities, for example, go on break, these students, athletes are still in club teams that play during the summer? Like, what do you mean by club teams?
So clubs, as far as like, they do have some of the college level, but for most of those high school athletes, so it's like the off season for the main sport. So volleyball, their typical season for girls volleyball is in the fall. And so right now, this into like the summer is the club volleyball season. So it's not through the school, it's through their club team or club program. And so even with swimming, that's ended. And so in a couple weeks, the club swimming will pick up.
Okay.
The I guess technical off season from the high school world. And if they're
now normally it's funny because like obviously from my ski racing coaching background, like we were considered a club team because we were a part of Camelback Mountain Resort and Camelback Ski Resort, but we were never fully a part of them. We were a 501c3. So it was technically run and managed by the parents, and they had a whole committee and president, vice president, all that stuff. So, but when our ski season ended, then our students go back to their middle school or high school sports and what they do, I guess, the rest of the year. So, but we were considered a club team because any team that's not sanctioned by the mountain and financed fully by a mountain, a ski team is just called a club team. Like, for example, Lehigh University, I got to coach some of their athletes for a few years when I used to coach on the weeknights. I think it was Thursday night we used to bring them up. And they are not an official like Lehigh University race team. Like, they're just a small club race team, I guess. I guess they have a ski club and it has racers in it. I guess that's how it's structured anyway. So that's why I like to clarify club team, because apparently there's many definitions for this.
There are. Yeah, the context is important. But yeah, so it's been very busy. And then I'm also teaching a sports psychology course at Muhlenberg College. And so
I saw that. That was you posted that almost 2 months ago now, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've been going strong since January, and so bearing a couple snow days. But
so 3 months ago now. Wow.
Yeah, and so it is knee deep in the semester, and so that's been And
now, have you ever taught a college class before?
I have not.
As a dedicated member of faculty, which is what you are now, right?
I know.
Wait, does that mean you're paid by them too?
I'm an adjunct faculty member at Muhlenberg College. So
that's exciting.
Cool. Yeah. So it's been a really, really awesome experience and cool learning opportunity. So
if our listeners are Googling you, and from your prior episodes, and for our newer listeners, you can find out more about Dr. Megan at mindoftheathlete.com. And they're all over Twitter and Facebook, and they have a killer YouTube channel too. But does that mean, like, if I went to Muhlenberg's site, you're now listed as, like, you have a profile on there?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Well, here's the question. Did you go through a headshot photo yet? Did they have you take photos?
I went through the ID photo stuff, and so maybe I honestly haven't even been on their website to look. But the first semester in a couple years, they've had the class just because they haven't had anybody to teach it. And so
so this was a pre-existing course that kind of fell off the radar?
Yep. So a few years ago, this gentleman who actually was a Muhlenberg alumni and was at the time coaching at Lafayette, their men's soccer team, he taught the class, but that was, I think, at least 3 years ago. So they had it for, I think, 2 or 3 semesters, and then they weren't able to have it, and then it just kind of
connected. Now, have they rebranded the class? Is there, because you're the new adjunct, is there a new title for it and stuff? Or
Oh yeah, I had to make the whole thing.
Oh, so you had to rebuild the entire program, or the course, I should say.
So it has been busy, because then my weekends, have been really dedicated to that, and so it's been a strong work pace.
Oh, the hustle never ends. So.
I know, and that's why I figured, since they're, as you said earlier, they're in every profession and all things, there seems to always be a busy season, or even a couple that happen throughout the year. Or even if you're thinking in the life of a college student or a high school student, there are certain weeks that are more intense than others throughout a semester. And so there are times when life gets intense for everybody, but through those times, it's still important to have that self-care coming in the way of hobbies. And so I think you and I were talking, it was like, it's just a busy time for people, and discussing the importance of that just seemed like a really natural way to go.
Well, and sorry, I literally just got back from a meeting, so I'm taking my jacket off. So I guess it's that kind of Friday. So, but it's funny, we talked about hobbies and how a hobby stops being a hobby to some people when it becomes monetized. For example, I quickly referenced before we started this recording that, the podcasting, for many of us, it is a hobby. It's not a monetized platform. I have some affiliated relationships, but it is not a self-sustained entity. So, and my girlfriend loves to clarify this for me. And she's like, well, how's your hobby going? Because it doesn't pay the bills. And I respect that. So, but, as the show grows, I will probably have a couple of sponsors and stuff like that, because right now I do pay to keep this show going for hosting and everything else. So I'm probably dropping, now that I'm paying for audio engineering and stuff on the side too, this year I'll probably drop at least $2,000 just to run the show. So it's an invested hobby.
But
So clearly this is a lot different than my athletic activities. You and I know about, I have a plethora, depending on the time of year, of sporty hobbies. And you being around athletics, you also probably have a few yourself. We can talk a little bit about those, because this one I find, to me, podcasting is much more mental hobby. I find it's literally putting in the reps, and I just literally get to learn from so many amazing, experts in fields like you from the sports psychology piece. And like we talked prior, how I only minored in psychology. So now getting to talk to you and the rest of your team every so often, freaking loving it, because it just amplifies that little nugget of psychology that I learned in college. So why did you want to target hobbies as well this go around for this episode?
Yeah.
Why are we jumping in here and trying to help people balance their health, business, and lifestyle when it comes to hobbies? Let's just dig in.
And so, I think just culturally in America, it's if you're the individual that can fit the most into 24 hours, you get a gold star. We really appreciate you. And, we push, and people, prioritize the work, the things that they need to get done, not only for their job or for their families or for their other people in their lives, to make sure, like they're dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, and doing all of those things that so often or so frequently we then forget to take and schedule that moment in the calendar that's for us.
I agree with that. Time management, that's funny, you just literally tied it back to time management. People feel they don't have time for healthy hobbies.
Right. And it's then we don't do that. And, I feel like this is the oldest analogy of all time. But, when you're sitting on a plane before you fly and they're going through that litany of safety stuff, and they talk about those masks that drop down. And like, if you're traveling with a younger child or something, you have to put the mask on yourself before them. And
yes.
So, when we want to, it's ultimately like, hey, we need to make sure that to fulfill all these roles to other people and all these other things, like, we need to be sure that we're taking care of ourselves first. Because if we don't do that, then that person we're taking care of, or those responsibilities that we're trying to get done, well, guess what? They're just not going to they may not ever get done then, or we maybe are just so burnt out that we're not able to then really invest and do it well. And so,
exactly.
having that opportunity of self-care and by way of hobbies and literally for some actually having to physically schedule that time in, I think it's just an important thing that we don't think about sometimes. And so I wanted to bring it up today.
So everybody struggles with this. Let's just be real. I mean, now granted, I have a hell of an adventure history in my life cycle, from the firefighting and all the other crazy sports that I still do to this day, or ones that I've done prior. And I'm sure you got, and we can dig into some of your stuff too, just to help the audience get well-rounded here. But let's be real. We all started somewhere. We all struggled in the beginning to see where our value was at and where our time management was at. And we've all struggled. Even to this day, there's times where I'm traveling a lot for business and I haven't gotten as many workouts in as I wanted to do, but it's still a priority. And when I get back and I got my weekends or an evening, like the other night, I made sure that I finished all my meetings up in New Jersey and got back to Pennsylvania, because a good friend of mine, Simone, who's been on the show, so shout out to Singularis IT. But anyway, he and I are big biking buddies. And I was like, man, it's spring now. I got to get back on the road bike. I've only had one ride in this year on the road bike, and it was like 66 degrees. I'm like, oh, this is on. And we banged out a sweet 24-mile ride. The sun was out. It was just like, it just revitalized my entire week. And that was on Wednesday. So that was a nice midweek kind of like kickstart. So
absolutely.
I mean, what's some of the struggles you've had?
Well, and I love that point you made, because you know what? I think I was mentioning with teaching before, I don't get out of the office typically until 8 or 9 at night, just with when I see my clients and things like that. And so then to turn around after a 12-hour day to then do another 12-hour day because I have to be at school at 9. I mean, it's like the opportunity to work out and to do those things that I enjoy, they're very limited. And so I love the point that you brought up of, I recognize like there's sometimes you just aren't going to be able to do it. But so then you make the time when you see the opportunity, but also you bank the time. And so It's all right, if I'm able to, for the weekend, like really just get in a lot of things that I enjoy. I know this week's going to be stressful coming up. And so if I can just like really recharge and refuel on Saturday and have that going into that week, I'm starting off with more like emotional energy and starting off at a better place that it'll kind of last you through the week, almost like you're making deposits for the upcoming withdrawals.
Right. And that's a very good point. Deposit, wow, we're getting some banking now too. Some finance getting mixed in with some sports psychology. I like it. You got to build it up for the future withdrawal.
Yep.
Which is literally like, as an entrepreneur, that's what we have to do with our tax season, right? We need to be setting aside tax money throughout the year and paying in throughout the year versus a W-2 employee, because you're going to get slammed with some taxes at the end of the year. So hopefully you've set aside a little tax fund for that big withdrawal.
Exactly.
Relate that back to our athletics, man. Like, we're putting in, we're hustling, we're either building a career in a corporate world. Some people are still doing that. I don't ever want to go back there. That's a whole different podcast. But even as me building a business and building the podcast, and you building your career, as an authority in your space in sports psychology and working with local universities, like, dude, there's going to be hustle weeks. Let's be real. And
Yep.
You're going to have a good week. You're going to have a bad week. And I think people need to be reminded that, hey, man, reward yourself for the good that you got out of that week. Maybe you only got in a quick yoga session one day. Maybe you only got out for a quick 5-mile run another day. And that was it. Like, that was it for the whole week. But then next week, you're like, you know what? My schedule's looking a little bit lighter. So I'm going to backload. I'm going to throw a few extra things in next week. Let's really try and make that stuff happen. It's important. It goes back to our conversation earlier this year when we talked about goals. And some of those goals might not come to fruition. But if you're not setting them, how can you shoot for them? So, right. I mean, you can obviously tie that together for us, for ourselves. Like, why is that so important in our brains, in our psychology?
And so, we only have so much emotional energy. We only have so much, just like we have physical energy, it makes sense. Like, yeah, we have to go to bed and sleep to recharge in that sense. And just like our ability emotionally to manage and navigate those situations through our week, to engage with people, to not feel burnt out, to go through a day and enjoy it more. We have to be recharged emotionally, and having those hobbies, having those things where if you are having tension or stress at work, or maybe it's in another, facet of your life, but in those moments where we inevitably as human beings are going to have tension and stress in our work, our relationships, you need to have outlets for them. And so not only are the hobbies like engaging in things that you're enjoying, but it's a helpful outlet, because we're going to have stress, but we have to do something with it. And so that outlet can help burn off that stress. It can help, release that tension in a really positive way. Well, if it's something you enjoy, then it helps leaving you fulfilled, going forward.
Well, let's geek out a little bit on that burning off the stress terminology. Like, there is science behind this for our listeners, right? Like, why is it so important? I mean, I can talk many different excuses, but I want to hear it from you. Why is it so important to incorporate in that physical activity? Because especially when you're bombarding yourself mentally, hour by hour, day by day during your work week, well, why? Why is it so important to just shut it down and take that physical break?
Yeah. So physical activity, same thing with, engaging with friends and family and actively being with those people and at places you enjoy. But physical activity specifically, it releases more of our feel-good chemicals in our brain at that moment in time. And so the way I kind of like comparing it to is, the claw machine at like an arcade or something.
Oh, yeah.
And all the stuffed animals, right? And so it's like our brain has these receptors that sucks up the dopamine and sucks up the good stuff that our brain releases, and that helps our mood. And so we as human beings always have it, but sometimes we have more than others. And there's certain activities that will enhance its release and other ones that will suppress its release. And so when we work out and are physically active, it's almost like someone is like extra filling that claw machine. And so every time that your brain's like to suck it up, there's just like an overabundance of it there, and it's just getting a little bit more. And so it just naturally helps our mood. It helps improve the things that we're doing, just our baseline level of mood. So then as you're going through work, hanging out with friends, things like that, like you just emotionally are feeling better. And so that's why, neurochemically from that aspect, it's having those hobbies and outlets are so beneficial to get that extra boost when we need it.
Okay. So neurochemical alignment maybe, or something. Yeah, I like that. That's nice. Getting recalibrated, getting realigned. Well, let's also go back to that point. Obviously, we delve into the physical, and you made a couple of points here on the relationships and taking that time to go be with friends and family. I remember I read a very, very valuable study. I can't remember who wrote it, but they talked about the new phenomenon of, which you and I know very well, of the Starbucks office, or that like for example, Mondays and Fridays, I try and be working from home, being local. It really opens my schedule up. I really try and only travel like Tuesday through Thursday for business. And it helps me because if I don't want to be in my home studio, I want to get out. If it's a beautiful day, I'm going to literally sit at that outside table in front of a Starbucks cafe or, whatever, any kind of latte shop. I don't care. For some reason, I'm really just jonesing on those types of locations. But the point here is that the study I read talked about the psychological health of simply being around other human beings, and how if somebody who's like an introvert, like that's one of the first things you should start doing is you might not be comfortable right away, but just start going out and immerse yourself into a social activities.
Yep.
And just start putting in those reps, because there is a chemical change going on there. What can you speak a little bit about that? I mean, you don't have to remember the exact, I know you don't know who I can't remember who wrote it, but I know this is very, very important as far as social psychological health.
Yeah, no, it's literally the similar thing. It's the same mechanism of action in there. It's like we're engaging in that pleasurable activity. And when that happens, we get the more dopamine. So whether it's, physical activity is like, 100% like always going to do it to a good amount. Engaging with others, it's also going to do it as well. And so it's from the brain standpoint, it's literally you're engaging kind of the same and similar process. And that's even why, and speaking of Starbucks, there's things now like WeWorks. When I was living out in LA, one of my friends, like she in her small business was moving into that facility. Then it's essentially just this building that's rented out by this company where as an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you can go and rent a tiny space in this overall shared office with other people doing the same thing.
Yeah, the sector of that industry is called co-working spaces.
Yeah.
WeWorks is just one brand that has actually started really solidifying a good footprint. But I can guarantee you, I could pick out every major city in our country here in the US today, and they have at least one co-working space. I know Allentown has, I think, 2, if not 3 now, actual co-working branded style spaces. So, because again, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who start working from home. I mean, you know that I have my nutrition business with Isogenics. Like that's a network marketing business, right? And a lot of those people who really, before they, after years of investment of time in building a business, a lot of this started like in their basement, in their bedroom. Like it's a side hustle while they're working at their jobs. Like they're just trying to build some additional financial freedom. But like, I also tell people like, dude, don't be stuck in your house the whole time. Like get outside, go to a co-working space or a Starbucks or something, because you got to get around other human beings. You can't stay. That's why, like, I think gaming does have a bad rap, but well, let's just say this. Yes, I know there's a lot of intellectual stimulation that comes from gaming, hand-eye coordination, brain stimulation, blah, blah, blah. But the issue is when you become so obsessive that you are not getting outside into the health of the sunlight and doing things outdoors or going to social activities because you are just, I got to put in another 10-hour gaming session.
Yeah.
You're not benefiting yourself at all.
Right.
So
the moderation, right?
Right. And let's be real. I'm sure you probably have, well, actually, no. I'm sure your peak athletes that you guys work with some universities, they probably very rarely turn on a video game system because between the class load and any kind of work that they're doing with you guys and their athletic load, I don't think they have time for any of that.
They don't. And this is where, in talking about hobbies and squeezing in and scheduling time to make it happen, that's one population out of many where it's so hard to even think about doing it. And so something that I'll encourage them to do is, like those adult coloring books where you're just engaging your mind in a different way, or like little things that you can have in your room or just at your house where you're not having to spend a lot of money or, take a half-hour driving somewhere. And so it's just something you can easily do where you're relaxing your brain, you're calming yourself, relaxing. Video games, it's not super common, I think, because you're right, like they don't have time. But then again, like in the college population, it's there. But some of my clients, I'll even tell them like, do it. But when you're doing it, if you're into sports games, play something that's not your sport.
Yes, you want to switch your brain to a different wavelength. Yeah. You want to take it out of its comfort zone.
Right, because again, it's having an outlet from that stress. And so if you're a baseball player and you eat, sleep, breathe baseball 95% of your time, you need time to like detach. And so if that video game is something that makes your brain work in a different way and is that outlet of that tension from baseball, you want to be playing a baseball game so you're reminded just of that stress that you're trying to release from you. And so FIFA, or something else to just.
Yeah. Well, and I think we and I talked about this before. I don't know if it was on the joint episode, which was episode 50, our 50th celebration episode with you and Aaron, which for our other listeners, again, Aaron Sparrow is actually their on-staff nutritionist. But I know it was either that one or maybe when you and I were talking on 53. I don't know, you've been on a few times now, so now it's going to be all blending together. But the point is that you had talked about, at least at one point, how the power of doing mental reps versus the physical reps. There actually has been studies proving that gaming can be used in a healthy way as a hobby for an elite athlete. Like they've literally shown how if they have them mentally, physically show themselves going through the range, that motion, that act, or like let's say shooting a basket on a basketball court, whatever, and they do that over and over and over again, it's literally programming them without actually physically doing the activity. And they've actually found like a spike in performance. So they're claiming now that when used the right way, gaming can be actually a good thing as a hobby. But to your point, that doesn't mean you do that all the time. Right. You still need to switch it up. You got to put yourself into an uncomfortable zone because your brain wants to be stimulated in different ways, and it can't be the same thing all the time. You're just going to burn out.
Yeah. And so it's, having those things where your brain's essentially able to relax and recharge, and emotionally you're able to do the same thing. As we go through our day, we're just kind of pouring out our energy emotionally. And so you need to make those deposits back. And so who are those people you engage with? What are those things you're able to do and enjoy? Is it taking a walk outside or going for a bike ride or coloring or doing some type of craft? I mean, I feel there's so many hobbies that are just out there. I mean, and if you don't have one, cooking, baking, all these different things, it's, what do you enjoy and take pleasure from? They don't have to be these grand, elaborate things, but just scheduling that time for yourself throughout a week to help yourself recharge.
So, and we've talked about this technique in different ways before, but how do you help some of your, and it doesn't even have to be like a peak college athlete. I know you guys also work with businesses and companies as well. And what do you guys call that? Is that mind of professional? Mind of what?
Mind of the leader.
Mind of the leader. So again, to our listeners, it's not just, Mind of the Athlete is the name of your brand as a company, but obviously you guys apply your skill sets and your knowledge to other domains. So is there a general way that you explain to people how to at least start succeeding with these hobbies? And because a lot of people, let's be real, just like when people go and try a whole new sport or a new weight loss plan, new nutritional program, or maybe I'm going to go try CrossFit or whatever, they just dive in 110%. And then I don't care who you are, you will eventually have this downward spiral, even if it's for a short period, but you're gonna come in so hard that you're not really setting yourself up for success. So is there some basic tips you usually try and coach people on to start introducing at least a basic level of new hobby introduction? Because let's be real, some people also get stagnant too. Maybe there's some people who already are listening to this that have good hobbies, but they're starting to fall down that maybe boredom thing and they need something new.
Yeah. And so the first thing I think in doing anything, any type of if you're trying to change behavior or integrate something more or less, is understanding why. If you're understanding what kind of the mechanism of what, why, and how it's helping you, and it's more helpful for those long-term adherence. And so, ultimately with the hobbies, the goal is to help increase emotional energy management. You want to rate yourself scale 1 to 100, 90 to 100. I'm an A, 80 to 90 is a B, 70 to 80, everybody has a tipping point. And so at that point in time, it's when you're just crying in a corner over a small little thing, we emotionally just cannot handle it anymore. We're burnt out and we're done. And so we want to avoid that. And so we need to start checking in with ourselves. And for a person that's looking for this, as far as a hobby goes, it's where are you at emotionally? You always want to aim to be at least an 80, if not a 90. You need to check in with yourself every day, a couple times a day, a couple times a week, for that number. Then you start to learn the energy vampires. And so those people, places, situations that suck that energy from you. But on the flip side, the things that provide you with that energy, emotional energy to recharge and refill you. And so your hobbies, those people you enjoy engaging with, those activities that you do, whether it be, going out on biking or rock climbing, or something that's just simple 20 minutes in your room of maybe meditating or stretching while listening to music or coloring, like something that's big to little, just those things that help fill you up. And so then you continue to just check in with yourself. And so then, all right, like I'm at like a 81, 79 right now. Like I think maybe if I like tonight, instead of, going out and doing this other like kind of work event or something, like maybe tonight is a good night for me to take a bath, to just read a book I enjoy, to sit, do something to just kind of fill you up a little bit, maybe get to bed a little bit earlier. So you're able to kind of manage and mitigate that time, and you can then schedule time for those hobbies. And but ultimately I think understanding how it's helpful and ranking our emotional energy is something that can kind of give us a skill to do that.
Well, and I think it's important, that last piece you just said there about ranking our emotional energy, because the valid point here is that everything you just told us and we've been discussing is that it's okay when your hobbies change, right? Our lives are constantly changing. And if I rewind back to this last segment to the beginning when we started saying all this, was you brought up the why. And I talk about why a lot on the show, because I don't care if it's a weight loss program, a new job, a new career, a new business, a new hobby. We need to really take time to just sit down or stand up or go for a run and think about it. I don't care. But either way, that why needs to be deep down and burning. It's got to burn deep within your soul. It's got to turn, some people say deep within your belly, whatever. The point is that life gets hard. And to our listeners, they got to be reminding themselves of this, that it's okay when crap hits the fan and you're stressed out. The biggest thing you should be learning from all of this, and when we bring you guys back on regularly, is, guys, like, it's okay. One, accept it, embrace it, and then take a deep breath, take a break, like really remind yourself that, dude, this is life. It's designed to test you on a regular basis. But if you've taken the time to then sit down and really define that why, then it won't matter what phase of your hobbies you're in, or phase of business, or phase of romance, yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, guys, I still got my why. That's why I'm still pushing forward. That's why I'm like, hey, great. For example, I'm sure you can relate this to some of your athletes who've had injuries, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh my God, their primary hobby might have been playing basketball as well as their sport, and maybe they just tore an ACL. Yeah. Well, that's not going to make them very happy. So they now have to find other activities, aka hobbies, to keep their brain and their body busy while they're healing and recovering, and maybe possibly never even going back to that sport ever again. What do you say to that?
Yeah, and we sometimes think, I loved your point of, hobbies change and evolve. For an athlete, that's like a devastating identity a lot, like if they have to retire. And so that's, definitely the extreme case on that, which is a really hard situation for that individual. But on the like kind of the smaller scale of, one hobby to another, and making those transitions of things you enjoy, and I'm just not into it anymore. It's cool. It's sometimes we just have to accept that as human beings, we're always changing and evolving. And sometimes we are prevented from doing that thing, but we weren't just that one thing.
No.
We have other roles. We have other things. Sometimes maybe they were a smaller piece in our life, but it's something that's there. And so we are human beings, and it's our personality, our character, and who we are. It's not the fact that, oh, I'm Megan and I, did Spartan races, or I'm Megan and I go to this gym, or that's not who I am as a person, but sometimes we really link that up. And so that's even why, having a diverse amount of hobbies, so that you're proactively not putting yourself in a position that, like, if that one thing is no longer able to happen for whatever reason, being an injury, or you move away, or like whatever it is, like it's just not able to happen. Well,
I was like that with my career too. Like, I've changed careers multiple times. A lot of people, once they're an engineer, they're always an engineer. And I'm like, actually, to be fair, you're not, unless you stayed with the same company that whole time. Yeah. You have probably been required to apply that engineer into different industries or trades, depending on how your career has moved. So maybe at your core, you're calling yourself an engineer, but now maybe you worked for engineering, equipment that makes baked goods, and now you're working for a company that makes, equipment for race cars. Like, so there's an example of having you throughout life, you will have to reapply and adapt and change. And that's why I love what you're telling us here, because this is what people have to be reminded about. Like, this is life, man. You have to be testing yourself. I think a person that just came to mind, I was thinking about this yesterday because I knew our episode was coming up today to record. And I had stopped at this, I don't know where the heck I was. It was this beautiful old, like, stone castle looking silk mill way north here in Pennsylvania. It was up near an area called Honesdale. I forget the name of the town. Anyway, the outbuilding had been there forever, and they had restored it and turned it into what's really cool. It's called Cocoon Coffee Shop. So I went in there. I was like, I'm gonna get a coffee. I'm driving by. That's why I love traveling. I just stop anywhere. I love the Yelp app. But I picked up a couple of magnets because they had like this little like inspiration wall, and they had like magnets for sale. So I bought these for us today. So here's one for why I do hobbies.
Happiness is not a destination, it is a way of life.
Right?
Yep.
So this could be an example of the kind of fuel or quote that you would use to really, this for our listeners, to really find that why, right? It's got to be deep burning. And that's what people need to remind, like, happiness is not on the surface. It's got to be deep, deep down. Like, this has got to burn deep within you guys. So that's one. Then the other one here, and this is when I got this, it made me think of, and I'm going to tell you the athlete in a minute, but I'll let you read that one as well.
Follow your heart, but take your brain with you.
Yeah, right? Because you're the psychologist, and we're talking about brains here right now. So that's for you. But the point here is that to follow your heart, but take your brain with you. A great athlete who tried to succeed in every sport. Who am I thinking of? His first name had two letters.
Are you
from the 80s.
Tim Tebow?
No, before Tebow, but you have the right idea.
Oh.
Two of the letters from his name was his first name from the 80s. Like 80s into the 90s. His last name is named after a famous R&B artist who passed away. I'm going to go with Bo Jackson.
Oh, okay.
Am I before your time?
I don't know.
Do you know who Bo Jackson is? Like, he was all over the commercials, like, Bo knows baseball.
Oh, yes.
Bo knows football.
Had a hip injury.
Okay. You were about to give me a heart attack. I'm like, dude, I'm not that old. I'm in my 30s still. Come on. So anyway, so Bo Jackson was one of those guys like, you know what? I'm going to step out of the norm, and I'm going to try and tackle other sports. And yeah, granted, he was trying to be the best at everything. And maybe he wasn't the best at everything, but he proved how athletes from that athletic mindset, you can apply yourself to other domains, other hobbies, other practices. Yes. So and that's kind of my point. I guarantee you throughout every single one of those missions, that quote, follow your heart, but take your brain with you. I'm sure his heart was there, but his brain was with him because his brain had to literally relearn all these other sports, all these different techniques. So I just wanted to connect on that stuff because I had to buy those magnets yesterday. I'm like, those are cool. I'm going to keep them next to the desk.
Well, and I like the one about happiness as well, because I think so often we just think that happiness is like it's something that just is supposed to happen. Like, well, you know, I checked this box, check. Like,
right.
I'm sure I should be good. But no, like, happiness is an active journey. Like, it's something that you have to choose to do, and just engaging in the draining activities of work and caring for other people and that. And I mean, they have their wonderful moments, but you need other things to help, you know, beef up that happiness and, you know, help that experience as our life exists. You know, we're not just in the role of the person in a career or a family, like we're human beings. We are very dynamic and multifaceted in that way. And so we have to happiness is not a guarantee. It's a choice we have to make. And through hobbies and through engaging in things that we enjoy throughout our day and our week, that's the path to getting there.
Yes. Well said. Because again, guys, to the listeners, happiness, again, like she's saying here, guys, like, it's your choice to be happy. And you might not be happy like with your performance. Like, I am not the best skydiver. I've only gone like 5 times. And until I pay to go into a program, they won't let me jump solo, which is really pissing me off. But because I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on your program. Like, dude, I want to pay you to jump out next to me, and then if I screw up, you can pull my cord for me. You do that anyway if I was in your program, but if I'm not in your program, you won't let me do that? Come on. Anyway, I know it's a whole liability thing, but I'm just tired of having somebody being tied to my back. I'm like, come on, I want to go solo. But, all right, I got to be patient because in the end, once that jump is done, hell, the whole way down, you know, you're falling a couple thousand feet through the atmosphere. It's like, dude, this is awesome. Like, I don't care whether you have a dude strapped to your back or not. I might not be happy about it. When I get to the ground, I am high as a kite. And you're like, this is what life is about. It's about living life to the fullest for me. It's about being happy. It's about for me, it's taking myself out of my comfort zone as much as possible, because that's how we learn, and that's how we change, and that's how we improve. And this kind of goes back to another point from another episode you and I are on. It's like, you guys can't be doing the same thing over and over, day in and day out.
Yep.
It's exhausting. It's boring as hell. I don't know how people do that. But it's like, guys, like, challenge yourselves. Try new hobbies. This is the whole point of this episode. Challenge yourself. Try something. Step out of the box. Freak yourself out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and you know, if you can't really, if you keep doing the same things, you can't expect a different result.
Mm-hmm. Definition of insanity, right?
Yeah. And so something, has to give sometimes. And so if you're having less of a tolerance with your job because it's just being it's stressful lately, or even at home, like you just get home at the end of the day and like you're so spent, it's almost a chore to hang out with family, and you don't even want to hang out with friends because it's this cycle that we kind of get into. And so it's, making that decision of, all right, like something's got to give. I got to do something different. And what might that be?
It was that way for me last night. I had been traveling from meeting to meeting since 8 o'clock yesterday morning. I finished my last meeting around 3:30, 4 o'clock. I was over 2 hours away from home up in northern Pennsylvania, but it was my nephew's birthday. And I don't get to see him very often. So he lives, really far north up in the mountains. So I was like, oh, dude. So the day before yesterday, I messaged his stepmother and I said, hey, I'm going to be up north on business. It's going to be a long day, but I would love to just take some time out and stop by and surprise Jeremy with a birthday visit from his uncle. So she's like, I think that's a great idea. I won't tell him a thing. So granted, it's a long day, but I'm stepping out of my norm. Something as simple as this, right? It's like, hey, I never do this. Let's just do something different. It's going to surprise him. Hell, it'll surprise myself. I get to go spend some quality time. And I'm glad I did that, because when he was younger, you're trying to be the patient uncle and you listen to the kid who just talks a lot because he's really, really smart. And I'm like, oh my God, I just need a break. This is why I'm not a parent. But, I picked him up. We went out to a nice dinner. And the whole conversation at dinner, like, oh my God, he's 17 now. The level of conversation this kid has, I was like, damn. He already knew you were smart, but he's like talking to me about relationships and how he's trying to help a girlfriend of his who's just a girlfriend, not a romantic girlfriend, but right. She's changing who she is for the guy that she's with. And he's reminding her that, hey, don't change who you are. What you matters. Like, don't be sacrificed. I'm like, are you serious right now? You're 17 and you're thinking about this stuff? Like, damn. I'm like, all right. So anyway, it's not really a hobby per se, but it's an example of change things up, man. Be spontaneous and get into things that you're not like. I'm not comfortable talking to children.
Well, and it's integrating and looking for those opportunities, and it's not going necessarily totally out of your way to make it happen. You saw an opportunity, you knew you were going to be in an area, you didn't have to drive now like 5 hours to go see him or something.
Right.
You just happened to be there and took a step back and saw the opportunity for what it was. And so sometimes we have these stress relievers or different hobbies or opportunities to engage with people we enjoy, but we are just so focused on what we need to do. We're kind of missing how they could be easily integrated on some days, in our life, because we're just in a certain area or around somebody else's work. And so you have to eat lunch and you happen to be, so maybe do it together. It's looking for those opportunities. And so then it's not as difficult or infrequent for them to happen.
Completely agree. It's all about stepping outside the box, man. Don't be afraid to change things up. It's everything we've been talking about. This has been awesome. I love this. So, wow, we're already running out of time already. And I have another co-host coming on in a few minutes. So I guess if we had to all encompass the whole hobbies thing, I think we've definitely nailed all different levels. And you're the regular co-host here on the show. Is there a new message that you're getting out there? Is there a new message now that we're in spring and we're focusing on hobbies, and now you're a teacher? You already were kind of a teacher, but you're actually like a faculty teacher. What's some new messaging for us, man? Like, what do you want our listeners to remember for your final words?
I love Parks and Rec. That show and just
I just started watching that with my girlfriend. I'm not a big TV guy. That is retarded. What is up with that? I don't understand it. It's funny. It's weird. But why do you like it?
It's more the characters, like they're just, their personalities are great, but there's this one episode and kind of a couple, then they sort of make it a continual thing, but this sort of tagline of like, treat yourself. You have to take the time to treat yourself, whether that's through hobbies, spending time with people, but it's all about that emotional energy. And I know we've talked about emotional energy and managing it before, and hobbies are yet another way to do it in a positive way.
Okay.
And really have it be a positive impact. And so you really have to treat yourself, take the time out. And it is important, even if there's deadlines and things you need to get done, and homework that has to be helped with, and food that has to be made, and all of these things that happen in a day. Something that's just as important is taking 5 or 10 minutes for you. Mm-hmm. And so it's taking the time to treat yourself to those opportunities.
Taking the time to treat yourself to those opportunities. Oh, you keep leaving us with powerful words every time you come back on. Well said. Well said. Well, hang tight and I'll give you a proper goodbye. All right, listeners. Once again, if you're new to the show, this is the amazing Dr. Megan Cannon from Mind of the Athlete, Ph.D. sports psychologist, now a teacher as well. Congratulations again on the job. So again, to our listeners, guys, this is what we're doing here. We're here on a regular basis weekly to fuel your health, your business, your lifestyle. Keep living a fired up epic life. And we'll talk to you guys again soon. And podcast is clear. So, all right.
Cool.
Okay, thank you. Awesome episode. I love it. So, and this worked out great. See, the advantage of this new system is you have crazy stuff going on, I got crazy stuff going on, and you're not traveling all over trying to meet me in person. Although we should still be doing the in-person ones once in a while because it's fun stuff. But this is a crazy week for both of us. So. But thanks for making the time.
Absolutely. And you have a wonderful next show, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. I look forward to the episode.
Sounds great. Have a good day.
You too.